Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
Test, test.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the General Issues Budget Meeting, November the 17th, 2025. Joining me in council chambers today is Councillor Ted McMeekin, Councillor Rob Cooper, Councillor Esther Pauls, Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Tom Jackson, Councillor Craig Kassar, Councillor Tammy Wang, Councillor Narinder Dan, Councillor Jeff Beattie, Councillor Cameron Kretsch, Councillor Brad Clark. We have quorum. Also joining me on screen is Councillor Matt Francis. If you're around the horseshoe, or even if you're in the audience, if you have an electronic device, if you could kindly switch it to the non-audible function so that we can ensure that we're hearing everyone and we're not disrupted. I would appreciate that very much. Elsie Clerk, are there any items to be added to this agenda?
There are no added items, but there are 9 added delegations that were included in the addendum and 2 added written delegations.
Thank you. It's moved by Councillor Nan, seconded by Councillor Wang to approve the agenda as presented. Any discussion? Seeing none, if you can show with your hands whether you support this agenda as amended. Thank you. Declarations of interest. Are there any around this table? Seeing none. We're on to delegations. We have some written delegations respecting the 2026 budget. Mike Shirelli, Carl Schaefer, Carl Griffith, and Mazhar Roshan. A mover and a seconder to receive, Councillor Alex Wilson, Councillor Esther Pauls. Any discussions on those delegations as written? Seeing none. A show of hands, please. Thank you. Just noticed that Councillor Mark Taddison has joined us. Good afternoon, Councillor Taddison. Thank you. That carries. We're on to delegations respecting the 2026 budget. We have 12 delegations to hear today, and we will take one motion after the last speaker to receive all the delegations. Members and delegates are reminded of the 5-minute time limit, which will be adhered to during this meeting. Members may submit another request to speak if they require additional time to ask questions or to make comments. Members are reminded that questions of the delegates are for clarification purposes, not for debate today. To our delegates, welcome. If you are online, please do not use the chat during this meeting. And I have to read out a number of procedural matters. If you have never delegated before, you will hear a ding at the 4-minute mark. That's just letting you know that you're at the 4-minute mark and you have 1 more minute to conclude your delegation. As per the city's procedural bylaw 21-021 as amended, delegations on the following topics are not permitted at this committee. Delegations respecting labor relation matters, conduct of a member of staff, and matters before another body, such as the Police Services Board. Delegations which are in substance an allegation of a violation of the Code of Conduct or the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act by a member of council or any member of a local board. Delegations that are outside the jurisdiction of the municipality. Additionally, delegates shall not speak disrespectfully of any person, and we will maintain order and decorum in accordance with this bylaw. As per Section 8 of Order and Decorum, no person in attendance at this meeting shall be disrespectful or disrupt this meeting in any way. So, that is a mouthful. I appreciate everyone being here virtually and otherwise. I'd like to ask the first delegate, Delegate Daniel Miles, if you are here in person, your delegation, it's your time. Welcome. Please come down to the podium. Thank you for joining us. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for having me. I believe I have to start this in a certain manner, and I'm not used to it, so please bear with me. Madam Mayor and members of the General Issue Committee, my name is Daniel Miles. I reside at 218 McNabb Street North. I'm also known as Intervention Intersection. I have numerous cameras there. I just came here today to give you positive feedback, not particularly anything in a negative manner or anything like that. I wanted to tell you that things are going very differently in my neighborhood since you have endorsed and financed the Core Patrol and other city services. I've noticed a lot of city services have picked up, and my cameras are so smart that after seeing 3 homicides, including a female serial killer on them, they have noticed that there's been a 25% reduction in various nefarious activities in my zone because the city allotted the money to the Core Patrol, and I'm just on the fringe of that Core Patrol. And it is working out very well for us, and things are diminishing. You're taking away my content, but that's the way it is. But I wanted to come here today and tell you that you're doing the right thing. I deeply appreciate it. So do all my neighbors, and so do all the small business owners in that area on James. And also to tell you that the Hamilton Paramedics and Fire Service, who I see every day out there, are really doing a great job. And I just wanted to say that everything seems to be going in a positive direction with the direction that you're taking. And I wanted to bring that feedback to your attention today. That's all I wanted to say.
With the conclusion of your delegation, thank you for sharing your opinions and experiences with us. Are there any questions of this delegate? There are none. Thank you again for participating.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Next up, we have Delegate Carol Andrews. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you. I have a few issues on the budget, which I understand is going to be an 8.6% increase. A lot of us have lost our jobs in Hamilton. We're homeowners. This increase will absolutely kill us. We're on fixed income. Right now, I'm collecting disability. As you can see, I walk with a limp because I have spinal stenosis. I also have a hearing impairment. This 8.6 increase is going to kill me. It'll put me on the street because I can't live anywhere cheaper than my house, even though it is not a very good neighborhood. So having said that, number one, the crime rate in Ward 3, the assaults on HSR buses, stabbings, thefts, where the homeless think that they have a right to my property. And there, all afternoon in broad daylight, when the police are on King William and 2 cruisers drive by every 45 minutes and see nothing. So the safety of residents and homeowners in Hamilton is very much at risk in Ward 3. Number 2, I would like to know why our policing in severe animal abuse cases do not want to follow the criminal code and lay criminal charges. We pass it off to provincial charges, which hold no weight. Criminal charges, if you leave Ontario, it follows you. If you leave Ontario with provincial charges, it does not. So 444 to 447 under the Criminal Code of Canada, which belongs to our policing, need to start being enforced in severe animal abuse cases, such as assignation of 10 puppies, an assignation of another King Corso, and no criminal charges are being laid in these cases. This is unacceptable. As an animal advocate in Hamilton, I find it very unacceptable and very disgusted in the city that I live in. I'm ashamed. Number 3, Tiffany Street. The drug use, stolen property, no security, and $5.2 million over budget. For what? This is not what you said it was going to be. So we either need to clamp down on it, get rid of the illicit drugs. Marijuana is the only thing in Canada that's been legalized. Crack and everything else is not a legalized drug, and to keep allowing it is unacceptable. It's illegal. Bylaw complaints on noise due to construction, no notice. Bylaw complaints on shoveling snow. I have a house in my neighborhood that never shovels his snow. I have fallen twice. I currently have a claim for when I went down on ice because this person never shovels their snow on this corner. So when I complained and complained and complained and complained, finally there was a notice put on there. But it took falling to get that and a ticket to get that. Why do people have to get hurt before we actually address issues? The two highest paid individuals in the city council is Mayor Horvath at $300,000 a year, and our chief of police, who doesn't want to follow the criminal code, at $369,000 a year. We need to step it up. We need to see officers out there. And when people call in the evening that need an officer and there's no answer, then maybe we need more people on the phones. This is unacceptable, and it needs to stop. And I don't think an increase is actually warranted until we can prove that you deserve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the delegate? Seeing none, thank you for, Councillor Wang, please.
Thank you for your delegation today. I'm struck that a lot of your concerns are around safety, security, and policing. Do you know that you have an opportunity to also delegate to the police board? Yeah, there's also the police board, so you can also bring all of these
Oh, I have.
Oh, okay, all
I
right.
have brought it to the police, and it gets shoved under the carpet because they don't want to hear it.
Well,
But
thank
yet
you.
they want more money.
Thank
No,
you for
I don't
your-
think so.
Thank you for your delegation today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, in person, is Adam Rizzuto. Delegate Rizzuto, are you present? Welcome. An elaborate slideshow. Sounds exciting.
Apparently it doesn't take much for us, right?
Yes. Well, I know we will appreciate the effort that you have put in.
Sure, or space bar or arrows accordingly. Okay, gotcha. Move this up just a tad, I think. Afternoon, Council. Thanks a lot for giving me the floor for the next few minutes. I'm a resident here in Hamilton in Ward 3, 124 Roslyn Avenue South. My name's Adam Rizzuto, and I'm here before you today as a parent of 3 kids, all of whom love to swim. And if I were to ask them who is their favorite athlete and also who is the greatest athlete in the world, they would unanimously give the same answer, and that would be Summer McIntosh, which is pretty cool, if I have to say, certainly being Canadian and being from not too far away from here. And so what I wanted to talk about was the availability of pools and the ability for Hamilton to be a premier destination for swimming in general, and those who want to pursue it. Let's see, will that go forward or arrow? Or perhaps I push one of the buttons. Oh, no, neither. I tried that.
Oh, there we go.
I was debating, thank you very much. I was debating using my overhead slides because I figured those are tried and trusted and true, but trouble finding one of those nowadays. I wanted to reference this is a screenshot essentially from the Recreation Master Plan, and the text at the top right, it's a little bit maybe small to read, but new and replacement indoor pools should emphasize venues with multiple tanks, different water temperatures, and modern design standards such as universal change rooms and barrier-free accessibility. And I wanted to keep in mind modern design standards as a point of reference, and just to look at this photo and just discuss it just briefly. As I'm looking at it, I see on the left clearly a slide and a kind of receptive pool for the slide. Next to that is what I would call a wading pool, shallow depth, maybe 2.5 feet or something like that. And then further afield is a 25-meter lap pool with, at the very end of the picture there, a series of diving blocks for each lane. And the diving blocks is a point of reference also I'd like to speak about. So this is Westmount Recreation Center, newly built, and represents, I think, the direction we need to go in here in Hamilton. So I go to my next slide. Which way should I use the arrow buttons? Pardon me, sorry. Oh, just scroll down on the mouse. Oh, sorry about that. So just to reference this again, taken from the next page, essentially repeating what I've mentioned already, in addition, specifically mentioning that 50-meter pools are not a service level supported by the city. And I think that is a crucial area that we should reconsider. And if I go to my next slide, I wanted to provide an example in a nearby community in Brantford, the Wayne Gretzky Center. This is a municipally run center. It's a multi-disciplinary, multi-purpose recreation center with hockey rinks, with gymnasiums, kind of you name it. But it also has a 65-meter pool, so essentially a 50-meter pool with a 15-meter kind of wading pool kind of adjoining it. In addition to, and that was built, I want to say, in the late 60s approximately. In addition to that pool, there's a newly built, maybe about 5 or 6 years ago, 25-meter pool. Both the 25-meter pool and the 50-meter pool have a full complement of diving blocks. Now, you may be asking, what are diving blocks? If you're watching the Olympics or the World Championships, so on and so forth, those are the stationary, not spring-loaded little diving blocks that don't really, they don't stick out over the pool water, they're just at the edge. Swimmers jump in and they swim their race. So the number of pools in Hamilton that have diving blocks are fairly limited. Jimmy Thompson, older pool, only 25 feet long, or 25 yards long. I made a mistake, pardon me. Westmount, which I pointed out earlier, which has a full complement. Hill Park has 1 block in one of the lanes. Sir Wilfrid Laurier has 2 blocks. And McMaster University, of course, has a full complement of blocks, diving boards, so on and so forth, diving blocks as well. It's also not municipally run. I can't speak to the access we may or may not have to that pool, but it is in our community nonetheless. And last but not least, in conclusion, I'd like to make Hamilton more of a premier destination for swimming, and I think we need new lap pools in addition to, say, what's built at Westmount. I'd like to retrofit at least 1 more older pool with dive blocks, and I'd like to see 1 50-meter pool in the city. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate Rizzuto. Are there any questions? Councillor Pauls, marathon woman herself.
You're speaking my language, actually. Okay. My granddaughter just got a scholarship in the States because she did swimming here, but she had to go to Windsor. She had to go to Brantford for even practices. And funny enough, yesterday, my little granddaughter, who's only 8, she started swimming, and it was at Westmount yesterday, and it was packed. I mean, it was packed. Hundreds of parents, grandparents watching these, so it's so important. And you're speaking my language. I would love to have a pool, 50-meter pool, because, you know, our students, you know, that's what they need. They need activities like whether swimming, track, whatever it is. So it's important. And I hear you. And I remember my granddaughter, the 19-year-old, said she actually knows Summer McIntosh because she swam with her, except she was really good. And but it's great. I wish we had the money, and I hope we can one day do this and do a 50-meter pool. It'll be great. Thank you for coming.
No, appreciate your question or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any more questions? Oh, Councillor Nan, is that, sorry, didn't see your name.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair Wilson. Thank you so much for your delegation. I have a young one at home who absolutely loves swimming as well, and came in 3rd place in the school championships for her age group. So that was pretty thrilling, and she was swimming and practicing at Jimmy Thompson Pool. So it continues to serve, right, in those ways. But I hear your point. Are you aware that the city of Hamilton is marking the 100th anniversary of Jimmy Thompson Pool in 2030?
Yes, yes, 1930s, unbelievably. It's, as much as it somewhat looks this age, it's a remarkable facility. And my thinking would be if we could not necessarily tear it down because it's such a historic building, but if we could build a new Jimmy Thompson, which is essentially the same model, a pool, 25 meters, of course, instead of yards, and with some capacity for spectators, then I think we'd be in fantastic shape. It doesn't necessarily have to be 50 meters. I realize that's a whole other scale of size and cost. But certainly, if we could build something like that again, certainly 100 years anniversary might be a good motivation as well.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, do you think the 2030th anniversary could be an opportunity to retrofit? And if so, what do you think are the priorities for a retrofit based on your vision? Yeah.
Well, the biggest thing would be the length of the pool, because Jimmy Thompson is in Imperial, so it's 25 yards, and 1 meter is 1.1 yards, so it's shorter than your average 25-meter pool. So if you're hosting meets, certainly if it's kids who are maybe 8, 9, 10 years old, it's not necessarily a huge factor, but if you want to have the capacity for older kids or higher level of competition, then the metric sizing would be important. That building is certainly big enough. It only represents a few feet more in size. So it certainly could fit, but I'm not sure how realistic it is to change that versus a new pool maybe alongside it. Certainly we probably have the need for both to keep Jimmy Thompson as is, as a great practice facility, and have a pool that would be great for competitions.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming today.
Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much, Chair Wilson.
Thank you.
Can I get some clarification? So the 50-meter and the blocks, are those standards that are required to hold swim meets or swim competitions? And who sets the standards as to what we should have?
Great question. So the blocks are absolutely essential. There are 4 main swimming types, breaststroke, backstroke, freestyle, and butterfly. 3 of the 4 start on a diving block. So you start the race and you jump off the blocks. Backstroke doesn't start on the blocks, although you use them to pull yourself up to kind of jump backwards into the water. So they really are essential for all races. So those are crucial. The 50-meter length is not as crucial. 25 meters is a recognized international length. I attended the World Cup event about 3 weeks ago at the facility in Scarborough, the Pan Am pool, and that is a 50-meter pool, but that event was we call it a short track or short length 25-meter event. So the other half of the pool was just sitting unused. So 25 meters is really crucial. 50 meters would be really fantastic. That's how I would describe it. And the diving blocks are absolutely essential.
Thank you.
Just as an example, I just got a notification from our coach that we're going to be doing a diving practice or a diving clinic, as they call it, today at the Wayne Gretzky Center at 5:30. So I'll be hightailing it out of here pretty soon to go attend that. So likely because maybe there aren't a ton of blocks here in Hamilton. The short answer being why we'd be going there.
Thank you for that. I appreciate that clarification.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councillor Beatty.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you, Adam, for the presentation.
Thank you.
I don't know how you may feel about driving to the outer edges of the city, but we do have a new recreation center that is being planned for the Winona community, and we've flirted with the 50-meter pool idea. I think that the cost comes down to the prohibition on that at the moment, but certainly hearing from someone that's directly involved with aquatics in Hamilton, maybe we should continue to advocate for that. Is there a group locally in Hamilton that is like advocating for aquatic needs? I know that there's the Hamilton Aquatic Club. There are other organizations that are doing things similar to what you're doing, advocating for this type of facility.
Yeah, I believe those would be the groups that would be kind of best able to kind of give a more of an expert opinion or kind of a true and tested kind of approach versus, say, myself as a kind of a lay person. But I think those come to mind. There's another Greater GHAC, I believe is what it's called. What does that stand for? It's not Hamilton in the H though, I think, right? Greater Golden Horseshoe Aquatic Club is another, and there's another out of Stony Creek. I want to say the name is something like Stingrays or
Okay.
something along those
There's a
lines.
few,
That's
okay.
escaping me. There's a few, certainly, yeah, and there's certainly more clubs going wider than Hamilton, and so those folks will be able to best, and I could certainly pass on information for some of the folks that we've just been in touch with over the years.
Sure. So I would recommend that advocacy is important if there are groups that are looking to see this kind of facility. And as I said, we have teased around the edges with the idea of a 50 versus a 25. Obviously, if you know somebody with a fat pay check or wallet or some kind of funding source that can contribute towards the difference, because there's quite a drastic change of the cost of the building. But
Yeah.
always interested in having these conversations with the community user groups that we could possibly collaborate on something in the
If
future.
I may as well, on that same question, something that occurred to me also, I realize McMaster is not within the purview of the city of Hamilton. It's within the community, certainly, and part of the, the resources available to us. And I know just from being there in the past, there are kind of rendered plans on display at the existing pool for a new pool facility. How soon that will be done, I have no idea. But just thinking kind of, out loud here, if the city is able to build something akin to that prior to McMaster building it, perhaps that would be a leg up in terms of attracting events and so on and so forth, rather than having to rely on a private, let's call it a private organization,
Certainly.
for what that might be worth.
Thank you, Adam. And a little friendly competition between Westdale and Winona never hurt anyone, so thank you. I appreciate that.
Any further questions? There are none. Delegate Rizzuto, is this your first time delegating?
It is, yes. Thanks,
Well,
appreciate it.
You've done an outstanding job, and there's wonderful to hear a proud father, and also to hear from members of council expressing their pride in their grandchildren or their children in swimming, and the importance that is swimming and the arts to the life of a child and their trajectory forward. So we really appreciate your attendance.
I appreciate that. I debated having my kids' picture in the slideshow, and I thought, they'll think I'm even more uncool. So
I know a little bit about that, but
thank you very kindly. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Okay, Delegate Carl Andrus. Good afternoon.
Yes, I'm learning. Hello, councilors, members of staff, residents, and of course, journalists. I'm Carl Andrus, Executive Director of the Hamilton Community Benefits Network, and happy to be standing before you, not just because I have been afforded the opportunity to discuss the budget with you ahead of the difficult process unfolding before you. A process further complicated, as you remember last year, by changes from the provincial government. This year is an especially challenging budget, not just because it's the last budget you will pass before the election, not just because local media will splash scary numbers of percentage increases to homeowners and buried in their rent twice as much to renters. No, it's a budget that places you as our municipal leaders in the most impossible of places. Municipalities face the front line of everyone's life, from garbage collection and public health to roads, transit, ambulance services, policing, fire, housing, and a myriad of other critical services that impact our daily lives and impact the lives of everyone who's a resident in Hamilton. You are the front line of all of the challenges, crises, and problems of our local society. However, the crafters of our Constitution didn't even consider municipalities. Hamilton exists at the behest of the province, with a provincial government that increasingly continues to download the costs of suffering into your laps. They do so with a very limited set of options you've been given to raise revenue. You can't run large deficits like both the federal and provincial governments can, yet you're forced to deal directly with the intersection crises of housing, addiction, poverty, and the main tool you have to tackle those problems, along with an estimated $5.8 billion infrastructure deficit, a housing wait list that added 1,164 households last year, with a backlog of uncounted applications. The press splashing stories of the worst roads, shelters always over capacity, and city staff and police struggle with overtime pay to clear encampments from parks, pushing the unhoused around, like, in the words of a former city councillor, a game of whack-a-mole. You struggle with all these competing needs and suffering, with pretty much your only real tool to pay for it being property taxes, meaning you have to justify every dollar to the very people that vote you in. An unenviable situation. So you need to be brave and fight hard to explain how and why you are spending every dollar the city uses. Again, an unenviable task. But every dollar you trim comes with real costs. 91 unhoused residents died in the last 2 years. I hear from peers working in the shelter system that cutbacks limit the number of residents they can serve. Day programs that offered showers, meals, and a place to stay cool in the summer have been shuttered from last year's budget choices. New programs that will save the city millions in future, like the Safe Apartments bylaw, the Renoviction Licensing bylaw, which will, and have in other cities, run on a cost recovery basis, are coming online, but need staffing this year. Programs which will keep thousands of Hamilton residents in safe, market, affordable housing could face a chopping block this year as you consider your budget options. They will save the city tens of millions of dollars in capital costs in affordable housing, but not now. Not this term of council. They are long-term investments which will take time to produce. There is so much social need, but given it's an election year, you might be tempted to take an austerity approach, to argue over programs and funding you approved earlier in the year, but now must ratify. Back in 2023, you had to find an additional $54 million of capital funding to approve development charge subsidies a previous council had approved, making that year's budget a significant increase. This year, you've chosen to give a 20% cut to developers and waive community benefit charges. Community benefit charges your city has used very successfully to build affordable housing aggressively. This budget will be a measure of what you value, not just as councillors, but as neighbors and community members. In an oft-quoted expression, don't tell me what you value, show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value. So councillors, facing the challenges with limited financial tools, what and who do you value this year? What will you cut and who will suffer and who will benefit? Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Andrus. Always appreciate your participation. Any questions? Councillor McMeekin.
Thanks, Chair. Not a question so much as a comment. Carl, you delegate here often.
Once or twice, yeah.
Yeah, and I have come to see you as one who, notwithstanding the challenges, stays optimistic. And I want to thank you for that. I think being optimistic on many occasions these days is an act of moral courage, given the challenges we have. So thank you for that, and the reminder that it's not all doom and gloom there. There are exciting things happening, and we need to keep that sense of innovation and inspiration going. That's what optimism is all about. It's about hope. Thanks.
Thank you, through the chair.
There are no further speakers indicating a desire to speak. Thank you again. Delegate Miriam Sager, please. Good afternoon.
Okay. Good afternoon, Chair, Mayor, members of the GIC, members of public and media. Nice to see you all again, and thank you for hearing my delegation. Following Carl Andrews's eloquent delegation, he covered basically the approach of just not envying your job with limited resources and trying desperately on the front lines to fill in gaps that are left or created by other levels of government. As it happens, we already have two very clear guidelines on values that should guide the decisions of the committee, and one is the vision statement of the city, the best place to raise a child and to age successfully, and I think the issues related to that were well covered by Mr. Andrews. We also have the commitment to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant. This is really, we're very lucky, I think, to have that commitment. Its life-affirming traditions of the indigenous nations of this region can direct us to a thoughtful, sharing, and caring society where resources are shared peacefully and respectfully, and we leave the dish clean for others to use. Some ideas that may be helpful or things to emphasize that are already being done that are related to this, because we don't want this wampum Belt Covenant statement and our land acknowledgements to be just performative statements or PR stunts. We really mean that, I assume. That would include allocating, I don't know if we have or not, a reserve for respectful Indigenous consultations, a strong Office of Climate Change Initiatives, a well-financed climate change reserve. I know that, well, I heard that there's been a proposal to scrap the reserve or not to put money into climate change. I think we really have to continue to do that if we want this to be a place to raise children successfully, for anybody to live well or to age well. And also allocating a reserve, if we don't have one, for the legal battles against the various pressures to allow our environment to be further degraded, as we've seen over and over again, kind of directed at the city by the province and other pressures of industry and so on. It would be good to have those resources available and not to have to scramble every time there's a court challenge or an appeal to some board. To me, this it's a triple environmental crisis, really. We have climate change, we have the pollution, and we have biodiversity crisis. And dealing with that is not a popular way to spend money. It's not very useful thing to show voters come elections, and we know that's coming up very soon. So we also need to educate the community about why we have to put money into that. If we hope to solve any other problem, we have to take care of these challenges to the best of our ability. And of course, cities are not the wealthiest level of government, and especially with other levels of government dropping the ball on climate change and the environment, I think we need to do more, not less. Yeah, thank you for hearing my delegation.
Thank you, Delegate. Any questions of Delegate Sager? Seeing none, appreciate your participation always.
Thank you.
Ward 1. Thank you. We have Delegate Ian Borsick with us from Environment Hamilton, who I understand is attending virtually. Yes. Good afternoon, Delegate Borsick.
Good afternoon. Hello, Council. For anyone who doesn't know, my name is Ian Borsick. I'm the Executive Director at Environment Hamilton. And just really quickly, I want to say I'm speaking to you all on the eve or on the cusp of Environment Hamilton entering its 25th year, operating within the city of Hamilton, advocating for a cleaner environment and for community empowerment. So I'm really proud to be delegating to you today. I understand we're not supposed to disparage previous delegates, so I'm going to say this absolutely respectfully, but I disagree with the previous two delegates. I actually have an incredible amount of envy for the position that you all have, and I will also say that I'm not saying this as a means of announcing my candidacy next year, but in reality, I'm looking at all of you sitting around the round table and online today, seeing a situation where our federal government is peeling back from acting on climate change, approving pipelines that are owned by Texas-based U.S. oil companies. I see an unrelenting assault from the province on not just the environment, but social services, housing, which they just can't seem to figure out how to implement a single policy that will get anything built. And beyond that, we have a Ministry of Environment that seems to have abdicated its responsibility to the residents of this city, where as a municipality, you have shown incredible courage, singling out bad actors that are harming locals in Hamilton simply because the province and our local MPPs aren't acting on them. And so this is where I have the envy for you. You have the power to step up, show courage, and do the hard work of explaining to Hamiltonians what we need to do to get out of the hole that we're in. Right now, in the city of Hamilton, you have the strong possibility of reducing harm. We know climate change impacts are going to be hitting us harder. We know that the actions taken by our southern neighbor to the south in the United States, as it relates to tariffs and other actions they're taking elsewhere, are having life and death consequences for people around the world. And right now, we're in a moment where it seems like every other level of government is trying to just buckle down and continue doing the status quo that got us into the situation that we're in right now. The city of Hamilton is spending a modest amount on addressing the climate crisis. It's also committing a modest amount on addressing the housing crisis and the various other issues facing us. But we could be contributing more, and you as councillors could be doing a better job communicating to the public what needs to be done. This is a time for moral clarity. This is a time to do what's right and then stand up for what's right. To have tough conversations with people who see, yes, big scary number in the newspaper and they think they can't afford that. Well, the people who are renting, the people who live on the street are facing significantly higher costs than the homeowners around the city, which includes me, by the way. We need to upend the status quo and make historic investments in housing, climate change adaptation and mitigation, and even more. We need to improve our social programming so then that way youth have things that they can do and not resort to ultimately activities that are generating a lot of panic and hysteria within the city. This is a moment before this election where you can either buckle down and continue doing the status quo of imposing austerity. Maybe we make some improvements elsewhere. Maybe we, have a new swimming pool somewhere. That's really great. But the reality is right now, this is a hinge point. You have the choice of making tough decisions and continuing to talk with Hamiltonians about why those decisions are being imposed on us, or you can just continue with the status quo and we can continue to see a degradation of nearly everything in society while people lose more hope with our democratic system. This is on you as council to do. And if you are abdicating your responsibility on this, then I'm going to kindly ask to just not run again. Make the investments that are necessary. Look at the science that's been telling us what needs to be done and do what's necessary to keep the city of Hamilton running and sustainable, or else we will just be having the same conversations that we've been having for the last year about budgetary issues until we're all dead. Thank you very much. That'll be the end of my delegation.
Thank you, Delegate Borsick. Anyone have a question of the delegate? I see none. Please, happy anniversary to Environment Hamilton. Thank you. Next in-person delegation is Delegate Isabel Cavan. Very good. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Isabel Cavan, and I am a second-year medical student at McMaster University. I'm very interested in public health and health policy and community engaged policy, and the current plan right now is to become a family doctor when I graduate. More importantly, I am a resident of Ward 2 and have loved living in Hamilton during my medical studies. I thank the council for the opportunity today to share my priorities for the 2026 budget. And I thank the past 3 delegates for commenting on the need to have more investments in housing and social services in light of our current times. To start, I'm a very strong supporter of the Office of Climate Change Initiatives. I'm very grateful for the work they do in our community, especially in their ongoing development of a climate justice framework. I would encourage the city to keep funding the Climate Change Reserve, which funds a whole boatload of projects. One of them, very importantly, provides subsidies for low-income Hamiltonians if they have a medical condition that predisposes them to heat-related health risks during a heat wave, to actually be able to pay for an air conditioning device, which many folks do not have access to. I would also, in that same vein, actually encourage the city to develop a policy that means that folks who are trying to access an air conditioner through this program don't actually have to see a healthcare provider, which for many people also introduces another layer of inaccessibility. I also support the work of groups like Hamilton Acorn and Environment Hamilton, who are urging the city to finally implement a maximum heat bylaw in all rental units. This bylaw is sorely needed to protect the health and the safety of all renters during extreme heat events. Relating to the climate crisis and volatile temperature changes, there are several other budget items that are a priority to me as a resident relating to the city's heat response strategy. Last summer, we saw an alarming number of extreme heat events. The city does have a map that's available online that outlines where there are cool places for folks to go, but I would urge the city to actually consider creating dedicated spaces that are 24/7 for all community members, including those who are unhoused. Hamilton, as an urban city with a lot of tall buildings and a lot of concrete, experiences what is known as the heat island effect, which means that our city doesn't actually cool down adequately during the night when we're having heat waves. This means that emergency 24/7 cooling spaces are needed when public pools, libraries, and community centers close their doors at the end of the day. During extreme heat events, I would also encourage the city to invest funds to actually making transit free, so folks actually come out to these community places to cool down, and then also having investments into deploying water hydration stations, which are needed as so often fountains in public parks are an unreliable source of water. Second, the climate crisis means we are seeing more and more unpredictable weather trends. Already in November, we have seen a lot of snow and had nights that are below freezing. However, the city's winter warming strategy doesn't actually come into effect until December 1st, meaning that when the snow touched down, the unhoused folks living in our community were exposed to the elements, which can be deadly. I would urge the city to make sure that the winter warming strategy is accountive of cold weather that's actually seen outside of December 1st and March 31st. And I would also urge the city to fund more winter warming spaces and continue to fund vital programs such as the pilot that ran last year between St. Joseph's Hospital and the Hub, which provided dedicated warming spaces for unhoused folks discharged from the hospital during the winter months, who before this program were just discharged to the street in the freezing cold with nowhere else to go. My last point, I was very disappointed to see the city continue to invest in over $500,000 into 6 police officers dedicated to enforcing the encampment protocol. Rather than spending money on surveillance and punishment, I would hope to see the city invest money in non-police supports to support our unhoused community members accessing housing that is safe, accessible, and for the long run. I urge the city to fund budget items that promote equity and resilience and work to create dignity for everyone in the city. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your delegation. We have 2 speakers so far. Councillor Wang.
Thank you for your delegation. You listed off a lot of different opportunities, and I heard that you are a second-year medical student. I know you've been in front of us before, maybe in the Board of Health. Yes, okay.
Yes.
I was like, you look very familiar. So I wonder, from your medical student perspective, in all of those that you've listed out, what would you say is a priority that we ought to be looking at, given your like sort of outside view from a health perspective, what we should be focusing on?
In terms of extreme heat or extreme cold?
I don't know. So I'll pass that to you then.
To the councillor through the chair. Thank you for your question. I think it's a very challenging question because my answer would be everything is sorely needed in these times. I think something I know is in ongoing discussions and is very kind of what seems to me as a resident close to the finish line is the maximum heat bylaw. I think that's an incredibly kind of low-hanging fruit that was developed out of BC after the 2021 heat dome, and studies show that kind of above that 26 degrees Celsius that would be implemented through a maximum heat bylaw. There's actually where we see a lot of these long-term health risks, long-term and acute health risks, and I think having that bylaw in place is really important to protecting folks. We know that the heat wave, the heat dome in 2021, those who passed away were those who were largely folks who were low income, socially isolated, and did not have access to an air conditioner. And that is something that's entirely preventable. And I know groups like Hamilton Acorn have been doing a lot of work on that bylaw, and also doing a lot of work to ensure that renters aren't kind of bearing the disproportionate brunt of landlords having to enact that bylaw, which I think is something that's really important because I don't think those kind of costs should be downloaded onto renters who are just trying to survive in their houses and apartments.
Thank you for that. I have other questions, but they're probably not in relation to your delegation, so I'll just say them out loud, knowing that you don't have to answer them.
Okay.
But as a second-year medical student, we have a vested interest in keeping you here. We need more family doctors, so I'll just leave that as a bug in your ear and not open that up for debate or anything like that. So just stay. That'd be great. Thanks.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. Great delegation. I wanted to get your thoughts on heat islands. Now, I know you mentioned about heat islands. I share your same concerns. We see a growth in heat islands, even in our planning. Wanted to get your thoughts on how that ties into these increased number of heat events that we're seeing. Do you see a correlation between the heat islands we have in Hamilton and those heat events that we're seeing happening? And it seems like more often now, you know?
I think my understanding of this, and I have done quite a bit of reading and research in this area, is that basically when extreme heat events happen, they are made worse by the fact that Hamilton is an urban heat island. So if we saw the same temperature in a city with no tall buildings, lots of tree coverage, no concrete, we wouldn't see the same kind of impact of these extreme heat events. But the reason we are seeing kind of higher temperatures in Hamilton is because of our city structure. And I know there's lots of work that council's doing to kind of plant more trees and have more green coverage, but the reality of it is that it is kind of a product of the urban infrastructure that we live in, that when we see extreme heat events, our citizens feel them more acutely because of the kind of urban infrastructure.
And this is really something that you would think that we should be addressing in our planning around Hamilton.
For sure, for sure. And I think especially knowing a lot of the unhoused folks who live in the downtown core and that they're also at a very, very high risk. I think knowing what I mentioned before about the urban heat island. So basically, you know, if we didn't live in an urban setting and we had a heat wave, you would have that kind of sundown relief, and you go to bed and everyone's like, oh my gosh, thank goodness the heat wave's gone, we can breathe. But in Hamilton, we actually don't get that sense of relief. And I mean, I felt that in July in my apartment at 9:30 when it was still really hot. And we know that folks who are living on the street are going to feel that more acutely and need to have cooling resources that are actually available 24/7.
Completely agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Nan, followed by Councillor McMeekin. Councillor Nan.
Thank you, through you, Chair. Thank you for your delegation. You mentioned hydration support, and I think I heard you say that fountains in our city parks are unreliable access. Can you say a little bit more about that, please?
I know there's a fountain map on the website, but I know that sometimes just anecdotally, I've heard from folks living in encampments that sometimes the fountains don't work. And I can't kind of give you numbers on what that looks like and when they haven't worked. But I know the City of Toronto used to have a kind of summer heat response strategy that was actually bringing out like tanks of water and cooling stations with tents so that folks could access water, which I think is really important. And it also provides a way to kind of connect people to other resources, make sure they know about cooling centers that are available. And even if there was a fountain, you know, if there's 20 people in a park, it may be kind of hard for everyone to get the adequate kind of water they need because it takes a little bit of time to fill up that water bottle. But I think that's a really important resource to have, not only for kind of health-related risks, if someone's dehydrated, which that's, you know, can lead to really devastating health consequences, but also as a way to connect people to other resources and make sure members of our community are safe during these extreme heat events.
Thank you so much. So what I'm hearing is a pop-up style temporary relief during extreme heat events that include cooling tents and access to water.
Yes, but I would also push the city to invest in more kind of physical concrete spaces that are cooling centers. I think the water is kind of an emergency situation, but like I mentioned, access to these cooling spaces on the cooling map, which is like parks, libraries, splash pads, community centers, I think those physical spaces, we need to make sure there's access to those 24/7, not just tents.
Thank you so much for your delegation.
Thank you very much.
Councillor McMeegan.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for your presentation. I don't think there's, I can't think of anything you said I disagree with. First off, I would observe that, by the way, I'm pleased you've chosen family practice. I think family practitioners are sliding slowly into almost the status of endangered species. It's a crisis. But building off of that, an observation and a question. Case to cause advocacy, which is what on a good day is probably a best case kind of activity. Take a situation and try to work it so that the benefits of solving the problem accrue to everybody. Case to cause advocacy is increasingly difficult when we don't control some of the levers that are necessary, particularly in the health and housing fields. So I'm wondering if would you have any advice for us around how to or personal advice based on your experience as to how we can better advocate with senior levels of government to get engaged with a shared sense of purpose on many of the issues, very important issues. Like I'm aware of was it Bill 60 on tenant stuff? That is an atrocious piece of legislation. Any tips for this horseshoe about how to more effectively change the world?
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor McMeekin, for your question. I'm very humbled that you are asking my opinion on how to encourage the federal, provincial, municipal governments to work together. I think part of the issues that I'm speaking to in terms of a climate crisis and extreme heat events, extreme cold events, and the connection with housing, you know, we wouldn't have to deal with any of these winter warming centers, cooling centers if we had housing for all. And I think the delegates before me really spoke eloquently to the fact that there is need for enhanced cooperation amongst federal, provincial, and municipal governments to do that. I think there's a lot of great examples across the country of successful projects that have run that have integrated health and social supports into housing. I think that's a great strategy to do, and I think really leveraging the kind of health lens that we know that there are incredible cost savings to our system when folks are housed and not deprived of resources in their dignity and have to kind of access emergency care. And we know it kind of benefits everyone in our community when people have access to safe and long-term and accessible housing. But I don't really have an answer for you, but I appreciate the question. I would just kind of urge council to think about how all these pieces are connected, and we can kind of ensure everyone's safety from the elements if they are housed.
46 years ago, my spouse was a second-year student at McMaster Medical wanting to be a family physician, and so I know a little bit about the challenges. She stayed. in Hamilton. It made a difference. We're tired now. Do you plan to stay, I hope?
That's a great question. I love Hamilton. I'm very open to staying. I say I will stay where who will have me. I would also, if we're talking about family medicine and I have the mic, I will also say the Ford government's recent legislation that they're limiting residency spots for those who have done 2 years of high school in Ontario is horrific and just so counter to the need to solve our primary care crisis and really discriminates against a lot of wonderful physicians and learners who, didn't spend 2 years of their life in Ontario high school. I think that's a great area for council if they're really interested in making sure we have enough family doctors to kind of work with the ongoing advocacy with that to get rid of that really awful piece of legislation that is, in my understanding, is actually coming into account this kind of CARM cycle, which is the residency matching cycle, and I think is a real step backwards in solving our primary care crisis.
I think our thinking is sinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Chair Wilson. Just a couple of questions. I'm wondering if the delegate understands or has a reasoned understanding as to how much money the city is spending on housing and homelessness versus our friends at Queen's Park. Because it's significant. We have invested over 122 million, 125 million in housing and homelessness annually. That's our base budget. And the province is giving us 29 million. And yet it's their issue. And so it's frustrating. I hear from people saying we should be spending more and more, but it gets transferred down to the property taxpayer, including renters, because the landlords go to landlord-tenant board and they increase the rent to cover taxes. So we could use the help of folks like you in advocating to Ottawa and Queen's Park, because there needs to be a reasoned balance in terms of who's paying for what. And quite frankly, at times I get frustrated that they take all the credit and they don't give us any of the money. And we do all the work. And so it's very challenging. So I know you're thinking about these things. Please think about that with your student friends. How do we enlighten the feds in the province that this is really a collective problem and not a municipal problem? You don't have to comment.
No, I'm happy to comment. Thank you, Councillor Clark. I mean, I am a very engaged and informed medical student. I do a lot of reading. I appreciate that the provincial government has really downloaded a lot of these responsibilities onto you, and the other delegates before me have spoken to kind of frustrations amongst people that I think is often delegated to a municipal government that is just not resourced enough, and the problems are largely at the helm of our provincial government. I do a lot of calling of the provincial government and emailing. I think it's just a continued push to, as you said, ensure housing is a collective responsibility, and looking where there have been successes in collaboration and where we can kind of implement that in Hamilton, I think is really kind of the best steps forward. But I appreciate that that's a real frustration for folks among council, just not having the resources from the provincial government. And also, as Councillor McMeekin mentioned, all the legislation coming out of the provincial government, Bill 60, et cetera, which just does not help any renter in Hamilton and is really counterproductive to addressing the housing crisis. But I know council voted last week or something on a bill kind of in opposition of that.
We are most certainly an outspoken council, and we have an outspoken mayor that is not afraid of challenging the status quo, but we need the support of residents as we do that kind of work too. So thank you very much for your advocacy.
Mayor Horvath.
Just very briefly, and I think I obviously know the answer considering your response, but you are aware that we're the only province in the entire country that has affordable housing, social housing at the property tax base level. Every other province funds those programs because they're income redistribution programs, and we've seen an erosion of that commitment and that responsibility at the provincial order of government for many, many, many years now. And so as we struggle with being order of government that the people go to often because we're the closest. We also have the least capacity when it comes to the programs that would really make a fundamental shift in what we're seeing unfold, and whether that's in our healthcare system or whether that's in our kind of the environmental impacts that we're seeing from other decisions that have been made or not been made, and of course our housing and social services sector. It's I really appreciate your comments, and I appreciate your engagement in the bigger picture. Thank you.
If I could comment on that, thank you, Mayor Horwath. I think also, given the crises that we are in, homelessness, addictions, I think appreciating that the city has limited resources to deal with problems that we need federal and provincial investment in. I think when it comes back to the budget, I would just encourage, from a healthcare perspective and from a dignity perspective, making sure that the investments that we are making as a city into these issues are rooted in compassion and dignity. I think it's a lot more expensive and a lot less productive to police our way out of any of these crises. And I think, being diligent with the resources that we do have, I think it's more cost effective if we approach these issues with kind of humanity in connection to resources, rather than, I think it was already mentioned before, but, playing whack-a-mole with folks who live in encampments whose lives are at risk with these policies.
Thank you very much for your delegation. There are no other speakers. Appreciate your time.
Thank you for your time.
Next, we have Jacqueline St. Pierre from the Hamilton Community Benefits Network, who will be joining us virtually. Jacqueline St. Pierre, delegate, are you available?
I am here. Somebody stopped my video, so if they could put it back on, that would be lovely.
Yep, we'll do that.
Oh, there we go.
It's Angela from the Clerk's Department.
Oh,
there you are. It was just
there I am.
Yes.
So firstly, my hat's off to the previous three delegates to speaking to issues that are dear to my heart. My name is Jacqueline Monique St. Pierre. I work for the Hamilton Community Benefits Network, and I'm also a human rights journalist for the Manitoulin and Expositor. Good afternoon, Mayor and General Issues Committee, and thank you for the care and endurance it takes to sit in those chairs. I don't take that lightly. You're asked to weigh impossible choices in a city with very real fractures, and I'm speaking to you today with respect for that responsibility. That said, I cannot stand before you. I'm a multiply disabled woman. I will not beg anyone to recognize my humanity or that of any other being living on Turtle Island. We are inherently gifted with sovereignty and personhood, principles that cannot be legislated away, not at any level, not municipally, not provincially, nor federally. There are many causes that are dear to my heart, but those of justice, housing, transit, and climate resilience planning are at the top of my mind. I have the occasion to speak with some of the top worldwide educators, researchers, and doctors on these matters on a daily basis. These issues stand to trouble even the most comfortable that sit in these rooms. If not you, then your children and your children's children. We're at the brink of a mass extinction event. I'm here for the people who live closest to those fractures, the ones who feel the cold draft of policy long before most of us notice, the ones who don't always have the time or the calm or the transportation or resources to come here and speak for themselves. I'm asking you to center them in this year's budget because I know firsthand what a hand up can do. There was a moment in my life when someone reached in, when a program, a service, a piece of community support caught me before I slipped through the cracks. And those interventions, those votes of confidence in my potential, reshaped the entire arc of my future. I'm allowed to be here today because someone believed people like me were worth investing in. That's the difference between who makes it and who doesn't. Sometimes it's nothing more glamorous than a bus pass, a warm room, a worker who has the time to look you in the eyes, a harm reduction site that stays open, a safe place to land when everything else is falling apart. Budgets may look clean on paper, but you and I both know they're written in the messy handwriting of real lives. They're not spreadsheets, they're lifelines. And when we underfund housing, transit, harm reduction, mental health supports, youth programs, when we thin out the very nets that once caught people like me, the consequences don't stay contained to the margins, they spread. And with full respect, I want to name this truth gently but clearly. Your own families, your own children will inherit the downstream effects of the choices made in these chambers. If housing remains unstable, they inherit a city where encampments become permanent fixtures and emergency rooms were mere triage for a bleeding that will become endless. If transit falters, their opportunities collapse into the narrow radius of wherever they can walk. If harm reduction is weakened, they inherit a city less safe, less compassionate, and far more expensive to maintain. If youth services shrink, their peers, and maybe they themselves, face steeper cliffs and fewer footholds. If poverty deepens, it will shape the social climate they grow up in more than any policy speech or campaign promise ever could. If we endeavor to have less crime in the city, we must invest in eradicating poverty over inflated policing budgets. But here's the part that matters. Cities bend towards the places where we choose to reinforce. When we build for the people with the least, everyone becomes safer. When we invest at the edges, the center becomes stronger. I'm living proof, and I sit before you because someone somewhere decided that people like me deserved a fighting chance. So I'm asking you, respectfully, earnestly, and with that same hope that once lifted me, craft a budget that lets more people rise, that strengthens the rim so the whole drum can hold a steady rhythm, that gives others the same shot I was given, so they don't tumble simply because the ground under them was never funded. There is always a reckoning for the choices we make. I will finish with this. Money isn't real. We do not even operate on the gold standard anymore. It's now a series of binary code. Thank you for listening and for the work you do to shape the Hamilton our children will inherit.
Thank you, Delegate St. Pierre. There are no speakers on our list. I really appreciate your participation this afternoon.
Thank you.
Oh, beg your pardon, I was wrong.
No, I don't have a question. I just would love to get a written copy of what the delegate shared. Her connectedness was really impressed me. So can you, if you haven't already, can you send us a copy?
I shall, and I can share with you many articles from other from people with more accreditation than I that have inspired me to speak in such a way. Thank you.
You were a pleasure to listen to, and you made a lot of sense, and you connected all the dots for me. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McMeekin. If to Delegate St. Pierre, if you would like to forward any written material, you can do so to the clerks, and the clerk's office will distribute it accordingly. Thank you. Next, we have Delegate Farsima Delgosha in person. Good afternoon.
Hello, thank you for having me today. My name is Farsima Delgosha, and I'm a second-year medical student at McMaster University. I am a current resident of Ward 2 and have primarily resided in Hamilton since 2017 with the hopes of setting up a future practice and continuing to reside in the city in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to share my priorities for the Hamilton City budget. Today, I would like to use my time to focus on the importance of funding to assist our unhoused population, specifically in the domain of providing winter warming spaces, both through daytime hours and overnight. First and foremost, the City of Hamilton's website states the winter response strategy provides additional support to Hamilton residents between December 1st to March 31st. Although there has been a positive shift in the past to provide these services regardless of the temperature outside, rather than relying on a response system tied to cold alerts, this plan still has shortcomings. The concrete date range for providing aid fails to incorporate the flexibility to provide services to individuals should the weather become colder earlier in the year. As an example, approximately a week ago on Sunday, November 9th, Hamilton received between 11 and 16 centimeters of snow, with temperatures falling below freezing. Tonight, the Weather Network projects an overnight temperature of -5 degrees, feeling like -9 degrees, a temperature already much too cold to safely sleep outside in. Second, I would like to comment on the winter response strategies overnight drop-in and evening warming spaces as currently listed on the City of Hamilton website. The site lists the enhanced supports provided include 25 additional warming spaces for people of all genders and 85 additional warming spaces for women and gender diverse individuals. According to the City of Hamilton's Housing and Homelessness Dashboard, as of October 2025, there are approximately 2,057 actively homeless individuals. According to the same site, there are 547 beds and 69 rooms with 276 beds and shelters available to unhoused individuals, along with 376 people housed through city-funded homelessness programs, which adds to about 1,199 beds available. Even adding on the 110 enhanced drop-in warming spots, we are grossly underserving the Hamilton population with nearly 700 people who could be sleeping outside in the winter by these numbers. For this reason, I'm urging a review of the allocation of the city's budget to providing shelter and winter warming spaces that will sufficiently support updated records of the number of unhoused individuals in the city. In addition to increased shelter capacity over the 2024 to 25 winter season, the City of Hamilton's hospital systems and the Hub, an outreach center for precariously housed individuals and vulnerable youth, provided overnight emergency warming centers to tackle the city's needs. Over the past year, I have been a volunteer at the Hub, and although I am not speaking on behalf of the organization today, as a volunteer of the Hub, I am concerned by the lack of planning and support from the City of Hamilton in providing these overnight emergency warming services. There is currently no plan to mobilize overnight emergency warning services, and plans should already be in motion if there was a desire to begin services by the winter response strategies stated December 1st start date, which is surprisingly to all of us only 14 days away. Thus, I encourage the city to reevaluate their budget for emergency winter warming spaces and remain open to positively collaborating with outreach organizations and the healthcare system to tackle these issues. Despite positive improvements made in the past, there is much work that is needed to be done to create adequate winter warming spaces for the City of Hamilton. This may be a large shortcoming for the current winter, and I understand the budget for 2026 is what we're speaking on today, and that may not fix the issues we are projected to face in the coming months. However, I urge you to take preventative action, or as we call it in medicine, a prophylactic approach, to make adjustments to our future city budget in efforts to better tackle these issues in the coming year. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Delegate Del Gosha. I understand how you skillfully preempted a lot of pleas from my colleagues with your notification that you were hoping to practice and stay here, so thank you for that. Any questions? Councillor McMeekin.
Thanks. I'll yield to anyone else. I don't want to hog this. Listen, I'm a Mac grad. I'm really proud of our local university and the wonderful students it's producing. We're seeing more evidence of that today, so thank you for that. My only question would be, because I know in some municipalities, I think Toronto now is opening a series of 24/7 warming and cooling centers, year-round centers. How many more warming or cooling centers do we need in the city? And you quoted some numbers there. How many people are going? Is it the people who don't have a place to go, or what's the what numbers are we looking at, and what advice would you have on that? Thanks, Chair.
Thank you for your question. I appreciate that. I'm a little bit newer to this space where I'm engaging with the City of Hamilton and trying to actually understand more about the budgets and the numbers and how we allocate city services. So I don't know that I am the best person to speak upon concrete numbers. Just by looking at the City of Hamilton's Housing and Homelessness website earlier today, if I'm being honest with you all, I did some quick calculations, and if it's that starkly apparent to me after just a couple of minutes on the website, that those numbers add up to about 700 people who are not housed because they're within the number of 2,000 who are unhoused, and then they cannot be allocated a bed through shelters or additional city services, that in itself is an issue. And I understand within the number of people who are counted as homelessness, we do count people who are precariously housed, so they may be couch surfing, they may be living living in their cars. So maybe not 700 people themselves are exactly on the streets, but as all of us know, as people who live in the city and drive around or walk around, there are an exceedingly large number of people who are unhoused. And a lot of that maybe is becoming a little more invisible as people respond to the policing that has been happening, and they aren't as stable in where they are staying housed. So unfortunately, I don't have concrete numbers that I can give you. I'm sure people who have been in this space a little bit longer might be able to give you some more concrete numbers. But essentially, if we're trying to eliminate homelessness in Hamilton, and I did see on the website that there were some goals to eliminate homelessness in the city in coming years, then we really have to project ourselves to accommodating the full 2,000 plus people who are unhoused in the city of Hamilton.
Thank you very much. On behalf of this council, really appreciate the attendance and the participation of the Mac Medical students. And I, again, would underscore that it would be nice for you to set up shop in the greatest little city in Ontario. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank
and your
you, appreciate
insights.
it.
Delegate John Davey. Welcome, Delegate Davey.
To try this out. All right. Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you today. It's always a pleasure. I'm here on a personal capacity to advocate for more Vision Zero funding. When I was a child, I had a poster of my dream car in my bedroom wall. It was a red Ferrari F40, and it had a 0 to 60 time of 4.1 seconds. That was mind-boggling because my family car at the time took about 10 seconds to achieve those speeds. Fast forward to today, and the Ioniq EVs that are being purchased for the city staff in response to our climate emergency declaration can go from 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. So basically, the power that was once reserved for elite supercars has slowly crept under the right foot of every motorist out there and is now ubiquitous throughout the marketplace. Just much heavier and taller. The current extreme is the 9,000-pound Hummer EV that can go from 0 to 60 in just 2.8 seconds. So considering that car makers are allowed to make it easier and easier to attain dangerous speeds, it's little wonder why a ticket received in the mail by everyday car commuters who may have just let their attention stray for a moment and flex their right calf muscle just a little bit is met with so much annoyance and picked up by Premier Ford as another culture war wedge to distract and ban speed cameras. So I hear councillors talk all the time about the percentage of calls that they get that are about traffic safety and the number of hours at Public Works meetings discussing the issue and where to best place speed cushions. So what other options are left for councillors to tell residents at town hall meetings that are held in the wake of traffic tragedies? Well, we could triple down on investing on road diets and multimodal infrastructure, just like the city's newest example on Mountain Brow Boulevard in Ward 6. Prior to that trail's construction, I would brave that cycling there, and I can tell you that since it's been constructed, the speeds are measurably slower, providing further evidence that the presence of multimodal infrastructure creates safety for everyone. Because when most drivers see road users on foot or bike, they're far more likely to subconsciously increase their attentiveness in order to make them less vulnerable. The physical separation provides safety for those who don't. Other wards look forward to these benefits as the accelerated cycling master plan gets rolled out. Thank you to the councillors that made that happen. You could also approve the redesigned proposal for Upper Wentworth that provides enhanced priority to people outside of cars. Speed cameras could have played a role, and in my opinion, they should be kept, even just to collect speed data to provide to the province. But they should never have been used as a revenue source for Vision Zero infrastructure that should have had ample funding anyway, because it just makes life for pedestrians and those who are reliant on mobility devices more safe and pleasant. Another key way of adjusting driver behavior is to invest in alternatives that would make driving itself less of a compulsory activity to make for getting urban A to urban B. The HSR re-envision is a great start, but considering how overdue it is and the urgency, we need to keep creating incentives to increase ridership. If you walk down Jollycut during morning rush hour, especially during dark winter mornings, the HSR buses' lit up interiors allow you to see through the windows wrapped in real estate ads to get a sense of just how many mountain residents descend into the core to work daily. Their contributions to reducing pollution, congestion, and eliminating risk of traffic deaths go largely unmeasured and unappreciated, especially when you consider that current policy has made it so that monthly cost of parking a single occupied vehicle at City Hall here is $10 less than the cost of a monthly HSR pass. So this creates a scenario where financial common sense isn't the obvious reason to use transit that it could be. And one where it's not hard to imagine why commuters opt to sit in traffic alone in their own personal vehicle rather than wait for a bus that's likely to sit in the same traffic that this pattern creates. Meanwhile, on every other continent, they invest in transit to make it so convenient and inexpensive relative to car use that it becomes the first and most logical choice. It's true that a lot of these places benefit from their history of rejecting foolish land use, but it isn't reason to surrender to our own sunk cost fallacy. We need to build more compact transit-oriented communities with family-sized units, and it was encouraging to hear a mountain councillor recently ask staff if Metrolinx is adding GO Bus Transit to the mountain, GO Bus service to the mountain in order to make intensification on Upper James more viable. Sadly, the answer was no, but this is an important question, and I think it's something that should be advocated for long before we sink hundreds of $millions into more road widening projects that just get used as evidence by developers at the OLT that the city is prepared for more sprawl. We need to expand HSR fleet. We need to expand the HSR fleet to achieve buses every 10 minutes on on even secondary routes so that schedule checks become unnecessary. And we need to make it less expensive and even free for demographics that we're wanting to make less reliant on these supercars for their mobility, like youth and seniors. So in closing, I'll just respectfully ask that you buy more buses and maybe thaw out the HSR hiring freeze. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Davey. Councillor Wang, please.
I appreciate that last comment. Thank you for your delegation, because all of the things you said are a lot of things. Everything from speed cameras to increased use in transit, bike lanes. So I think I just needed to just get a little more clarity. What if, as you know, budget is finite, property taxes are finite. So what would you recommend that we prioritize in all of the different comments that you had made in your delegation?
Well, I think that there's a lot of money being sunk into road widening proposals that are made necessary because of our deficient public transit services. So I think that the main priority needs to be public transit, and I would say cycling infrastructure after that. But I know that there's going to be the tax increase. The proposed tax increase is very controversial. I'm just saying that the cost of road widening, like Rymal, 88 million right there. The proposed widening of the Lincoln Red Hill is 134 million, I think. So there's a lot of money there that, if invested into transit, it could potentially negate the need for these road widening projects.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, for your delegation.
Thank you. There are no Councillor Cooper, please.
Thank you for your delegation today. I truly am interested in public transit and want to get your thoughts on what's your thoughts on how we increase the ridership on the HSR more? I've heard residents in my area mention about efficient and effective and reliable, and those were some of the things in terms of how quickly they could get from place to place as they go around the city. But I'd love to get your thoughts on what do you see as key to us increasing that ridership on the HSR?
Yeah, I think the frequency, and I think it'll be interesting to see how the re-envision rolls out and how effective that is, because I know that there are, I think there are 10-minute buses that are coming on some routes, the primary routes. So I think that will make a big difference. But I think getting more frequency on the secondary routes is important. And also, I think in the downtown core, one of the things that work in great partnership with HSR is the bike share program. So I think that I know that it's very popular down here, and I think that there's talk of electric bikes being added, and once those are added, I think the escarpment won't be nearly the barrier of getting up and down using bike share. But I know that the bike share works in partnership with HSR very well, because you can bike if you're not close to a bus stop. You can bike to the near bus stop, just lock it up there for I think it's 75 cents or something, just to leave it or whatever, and you can jump on a bus from there. So I think that would be a really effective thing on the mountain, is to increase those options, as well as just get the bike network have more connectivity on the mountain as well.
And how do you find the routes in terms of going around the city and your ability to get from place to place? Do you find they're effective the way we have them laid out right now? Or?
Well, I think they're lacking a little bit right now. I've noticed that the only buses that go up the Claremont Access right now are the ones going to the Mountain Garage. I think it's great that the re-envision has a bus going up Claremont now, and I think that'll make quite a big difference just to connect to that part of the mountain.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Delegate Davey. Really appreciate your participation today.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Our next in-person delegate is Delegate Seth Floyd. Good afternoon. Just pull it up, the knob.
Apologies, mine at home works a bit different. Good afternoon, Madam Mayor and members of the General Issues Committee in attendance. My name is Seth. I am here to represent and express the views and opinions of only myself for what I believe would be the betterment of our city. So the clear reason for the outcry against austerity, particularly increased taxation recently, is in my opinion because the public has lost trust in the efficiency of the use of tax dollars. Various organizations have and regularly work with frozen budgets or budget cuts and still manage to provide excellent service within said budgetary constraints. Therefore, a greater focus on the scrutiny of taxpayer spending is much overdue. The answer should not always be to default to throwing more money at a problem. And therefore, onto my primary point, which relates to throwing money at problems. The police services budget is the highest single spend of the Hamilton tax dollars, accounting for just under 20% of the total tax burden. This is greater than social services, public health, paramedics, and housing combined. Therefore, it should come as no surprise that we have crises in the latter. Time and time again, studies have shown, including a recent study by Carleton University, paying more for policing doesn't stop or even reduce crime. Police spending has outrun inflation by 50% or more. It has risen faster than expenditures on transit and social services, and yet trend analysis has indicated zero correlation between increased spending and crime reduction. What studies have found is that investment in programs which tackle risk factors for crime give much better returns on crime reduction. These risk factors include poverty, housing instability, and lack of social services. So again, I ask, why are we spending more on treating the problem than preventing it? Putting more money in the pockets of the police does not house people, it does not provide them the outreach they need, and it does not help them pay their bills. Ironically, it just helps to increase their bills by increasing the overall tax burden. So I would like to highlight some numbers to hammer home this point. So inflation is currently 2 to 2.5%, as it has been most of the year. Last year, it was no greater than 3%. In October, the Madam Mayor issued a budget directive targeting a tax increase of maximum 4.25%. In 2025, Hamilton Police budget increased by nearly 11%, and for the 2026 budget request this year, it's a further 8.62%. So if we do some quick math, the police budget increase is triple that of inflation and double that of the Madam Mayor's directive. Therefore, I would ask why it is that most services would be expected to limit their increases, if any, to no more than 4.25%, while the police service demands double the average increase, all while they already received an 11% increase last year and nearly 7% increase in 2023 and 2024 as well. Now, to be clear, do not take this as criticism of the Hamilton Police Service, nor the brave men and women it is comprised of. I myself donate to the campaign advocating for mental health support. I've Got Your Back 911, and if you don't believe me, I have a sticker on my car and stickers throughout my house. However, the police services budget is disproportionate relative to other services within the budget. Every other service's budgets are scrutinized to some degree, and I do not feel the Hamilton Police Service budget faces the same level of scrutiny, if any at all. Excellence in management should be able to operate successfully within the strict budgets and still be able to achieve and deliver on essential services. Therefore, I would hope the Chief of Police, whose salary has grown an average of 9% per year since 2021, from $267,000 to nearly $400,000, would be able to reflect this excellence in management. So in closing on that point, I think it is absolutely necessary for the police budget to be held to the same or greater levels of scrutiny. They should be expected to, and in all honesty, try harder to find efficiencies elsewhere. Evidently, increases to said budget are the primary driver to the increases in tax, and therefore they should be the first to look inward at finding efficiencies, not the last. And I bring this up because it is in part the council's responsibility to push back and hold them accountable in doing so. Otherwise, the budget will keep growing unchecked, unvetted, and without resistance year after year, as it has been. As a closing statement, I just wanted to note, and it's been noted previously, that 2026 is an election year. Political austerity will not be rewarded. Hamiltonians are aware of the upcoming election and are watching very closely on how City Council acts on various issues of importance, including the budgetary discussions of topic today. I take as an example the recent vote on the vacant unit tax, which made very clear the perspectives and priorities of each of the ward councillors. I do not believe minor inconveniences of homeowners needing to fill out additional paperwork is a higher priority than generating additional revenue streams for the city, which also has additional benefits of holding landlords accountable and the potential for positive impacts on housing availability. So I just want to be very clear as I close my remarks to the Madam Mayor and the Council. Voters are watching and keeping record of who they believe has the best interests of the working class. So to my fellow Hamiltonians, please get involved in your community, empathize with each other and help each other out. And in the upcoming election, please volunteer for candidates who prioritize people and community above all else. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Floyd. Any questions for the delegate? There are none. I appreciate your participation, waiting as you have, and thank you for coming out this afternoon.
Thank you for your time.
We have one final delegate who it's a pre-recorded delegation, Celine Hanna.
Hi, my name is Celine Hanna. I've been a resident of Hamilton for 17 years, and this is my first time participating in a delegation. The reason I'm participating today is because I've recently been informed that there was a proposal to replace firework displays with environmentally friendly alternatives that was sadly turned down by council, in part due to budget reasons. This really surprised me because I've loved fireworks since I was a child, but am very aware of the harmful effects of fireworks and thought that this proposal was a positive one. If you do a quick internet search, you'll find confirmation that fireworks have a devastating impact on the environment. So knowing this, it's time that we embrace change. I will briefly summarize why this is important. First, let's talk about pollution. Fireworks are a mixture of gunpowder and other chemicals which enable the ignition and give the fireworks their color. During the explosion, the fireworks release harmful emissions, including carbon monoxide and heavy metals, including copper, barium, and strontium, all of which are toxic. Fireworks release particulate matter, which affect our lungs and our heart. And as Hamiltonians, we are already exposed to high levels of particulate matter by heavy industry. And in recent years, wildfire smoke has added to the particulate matter that we breathe. Fireworks also release debris that contaminate the soil and groundwater. Perchlorate, which is an oxidizer in the firework, persists in the environment for long periods of time. Perchlorate and microplastics can end up in water bodies and affect fish development. Now let's talk about wildlife. The loud bang of explosions is stressful to all animals. I've witnessed firsthand waterfowl frantically flying away in the harbor when the fireworks go off. Studies have shown that the explosions and lights disrupt migratory bird resting sites and flying patterns. It's been documented that birds will leave the nest at the sound of the explosions, and I'll give you a local example here. McMaster had an annual Light Up the Night celebration at the end of classes. The celebration used to include fireworks, but in 2013, eagles returned to Cootes Paradise for the first time in decades. This was very exciting to birders, which there are many in Hamilton. A group of naturalists went out at the time of the festivities and observed that the eagles would leave the nest as the fireworks went off, leaving the babies unattended and prone to predation by owls that also live in the area. Through negotiations with McMaster, the annual tradition no longer includes fireworks and instead includes a beautiful display of strung-up lights. The city of Hamilton should follow this momentum and take the opportunity to show how progressive it is, and to be a leader in the transition from traditional fireworks to alternatives like laser shows or drone shows. So what I'm asking for today is that the city replace the fireworks at critical locations where vulnerable ecosystems exist, where wildlife is most affected, and during critical times when birds are nesting or during wildfire seasons. Thank you for your time. Thank you for listening.
Thank you to Delegate Celine Hanna. If I can have a mover and a seconder, it's moved by Councillor McMeekin, seconded by Councillor Kazar to receive the delegations today. A show of hands, please. Unanimously. Thank you. It's carried. To every single delegate who participated here today, whether it was your first time or you're a frequent flyer, we're very, very honored that you took time out. We listened intently, and I want to personally thank each delegate for taking the time to participate and share their views, priorities, and opinions. Thank you very much. This meeting is adjourned.